Thank you, Denise. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ruby, and the extension folks that help us put these webinars together. My name is David Rodriguez, like Denise introduced me. We'll try our best at the end of this webinar to answer your vegetable gardening related questions. But try to hold your questions to the end because often people that ask the question at the end, we've covered it throughout the webinar. So try to hold it to the end if it's vegetable garden related, and we'll try our best to answer it there. And that's me, David Rodriguez. Thank y'all for being here today. And our topic today is 12 months of vegetable gardening. So that's my email address there. And we'll show it again towards the end of the webinar. So if you have any gardening or landscape questions, we'll be more than happy email them to us. If you need something identified, send quality images attached, not part of the email, please. We'll try our best to get them answered, or we'll send them to one of our seasoned master gardeners at our hotline there. We usually do our presentations focusing on Central and South Texas. I know we have folks throughout the state that have been attending these horticulture gardening webinars, but the information's the same. You might be a little bit off, you might start 2 weeks difference if you're north or south of San Antonio, both for spring and the fall time, but the information's all about right. Bexar County and San Antonio has always had an excellent horticulture program and often the envy of the state because all these years, 50 plus years or so, horticulturally speaking, we really have a beautiful partnership with farmers on the outskirts for our research trials. We have the largest compost facility in the state, the largest ornamental plant grower in the state here in San Antonio. We have one of the oldest overall plant growers that grows the best, prettiest poinsettias in the state, as well as these new plant introductions, vegetables and others. And of course, independent nurseries that we work with for many, many years, as old as 80 years or so. So we love tradition. We love these programs, and hopefully y'all can go back to y'all's counties and build those same partnerships with your independent nurseries, growers, and folks like that. So again, welcome today. So hopefully, the topic today is 12 months of vegetable gardening, but hopefully you're aware and have gone, but most importantly, has subscribed to our My Extension 210 YouTube channel. We have a lot of real good archived educational webinars of many, many subject matters on there. We have 3 or 4 or so related to vegetable garden. I think one on citrus and a lot of other great ones, and pests. Molly Keck, our entomologists, have a lot of them corresponding with these horticulture talks with the pest challenges as well. So if you're not using this My Extension 210 YouTube channel, but better yet, subscribe to it, share it, help us spread the word, and review these webinars too, because pretty much most of the information to help you become more successful, everything's there, folks. That's the land grant university and the extension service at its best, helping y'all grow the best gardens out there throughout the great state of Texas. So vegetable gardening, a lot of us are fortunate if you plant it outright, have a well-prepared soil, you purchase high quality plants, and you plant them correctly. A lot of us can grow something 12 months throughout the year, something edible in and around our garden and landscape. So it's possible, folks. We have 2 definite planting seasons, particularly when it comes to vegetable gardening, both the spring and the fall, and often they're mirrored. They're mirrored, and we'll kind of cover that when we hit these months. In the springtime, we typically start with cool weather crops, which include typically root crops that are typically direct seeded to the ground, leafy greens, and then your cold crops, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, which is usually transplants. Till about March, late March or so, early April, then we transition to warm weather crops, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, anything with a fruit, a seed. And then we go into warm weather crops, late spring, early summer, southern peas, sweet potatoes, okra. So the fall is basically opposite. And, we got to get these warm weather crops in this week. And then we start transitioning around mid September or so, and heaviest in the month of October, typically with cool weather crops. So they're kind of mirrored. They're kind of mirrored there. And of course, extension horticulture, Earthkind is our philosophy. We use science, facts, and tradition in order to make things successful. And we promote both things that work traditional, conventional agriculture as well as natural and organic. Remember, 2% of this country feeds us, folks, and the whole world if need be. And with that 2% that feeds us, 98% of that, agriculturally speaking, is considered traditional, conventional. So that's good. That's good. They do much better than dad and grandpa and great grandpa. And who else is the best stewards of the land is our American farmers. And hopefully all of us can agree with that. If you're not familiar with the more in-depth Earthkind program, please visit our Aggie Horticulture website, learn more about the Earthkind program, and please, if you've never taken the Earthkind challenge of environmental stewardship, take it and see how where you're at as a good environmental stewardship of sustainability of your backyard garden and landscape. That's our model program with Extension Horticulture. So I always do reviews because the failure and issues and challenges that people have when we have these horticultural problems is simple principles. And they're very simple. Many of you have heard of these multiple times, but we don't presume that your experience or think your experience or you're a newbie to San Antonio, which we have a lot of transplants coming into Texas in general. And we always have to cover the principles of basic horticulture knowledge here. So when we grow fruit or vegetables, edible crops, sun is needed. All day full sun with excellent air circulation. So timing is important of planting the right plants at the right time, putting quality seed in the ground, putting a healthy, green, vigorous transplant out, very healthy. You start out with healthy plants and seed. You should finish with good quantity and quality yields from those plants. But shade is your convenience. We like trees, fruit trees, and shade trees. But shade is your convenience. When you talk about edible crops, you need that full sunlight. You need that ample air circulation. So spacing of all these crops are very, very important to minimize disease, to minimize insects. We typically make these problems, folks. So if we just do these basic steps and principles, we can alleviate a lot of these issues. And we also have to take in consideration, when we grow a lot of these crops, 90% of that root system is typically 6 inches, 8 inches below the soil surface. So we also have to take in consideration trees' root potential in those root zones of these vegetable crops being robbers and thieves of essential nutrition as well as water. So often we have to elevate or do raised beds or containers. So all those need to be in consideration for long-term success when we plan and we prepare before we purchase, then plant our vegetable garden. A lot of us have challenge if you live on the 35 corridor. A lot of us do not have deep soils. It's just a silly slide here. You know, a lot of us are on blackland soil, clay type soils. A lot of our parent material in central South Texas is limestone. Limestone. So we lack soils. You know, we lack deep soils. So, you know, you need 6 inches, 12 inches, ideally plus, of good soil for most plants, including vegetables, right? So we have to look at what we have to work with and what can we do to adjust sandy type soils, heavy clay type soils, or simply lack of soils. You know, raised bed gardening container, etc., are bringing in desired mix. You know, some of y'all have been planting your gallon tomatoes and bigger plants that you upgraded, like peppers and eggplant, the last 30 days. You need to get all those warm weather crops in the ground here pretty quick here. And some of y'all are in situations to dig your landscape trees, shrubs, perennials, or even these gallon tomatoes. You have to bring in an air hammer. So it's challenging depending what part of the state that you live there. But you need soil. Soil is the key. It's such a simple, basic principle of sunlight, air circulation, and good soil. But we do review these concepts. Often, just like the school gardens programs or areas where we're challenged of lack of soil or rocky soil or no soil at all, you know, there's a lot of good places that sell landscape mixes, garden mixes, vegetable blends. So, you know, if you need to bring that in, ideally 12 inches plus really would make a difference. Make sure the material is consists of pasteurized, weed-free, finely screened topsoil, aged manure compost blended, and that these products have been aged, particularly when you use manure products, you know, ideally a year. Y'all do know what E. coli and salmonella are, correct? And of course, the bedding material. So you really have to age these types of manure-based type products at least a year, screen it, get the fines out. But bringing them in through these bulk dealers is always an option. Pick it up yourself in your pickup or trailer, cover it, of course, or get it delivered to the site. This is an old picture when we used to do San Antonio used to be the largest school gardens program in the nation back in the mid to late 80s and 90s. And we used to put gardens at every school here in Bexar County, San Antonio, even on the asphalt. And we used to use these old landscape timbers. We don't recommend landscape timbers hardly anymore, and then just use it. We need to make a note, you know, that hopefully some of y'all are doing home composting as well. But we need to make a note that a compost is a soil amendment, not a fertilizer. So remember, vegetables are short-term crops, both the cool and warm weather crops. So you have to accelerate them, and we'll review about the fertilizer here in just a second as well. So ample nutrition and constant amending with organic material. Remember, organic material in these blends or the compost that you bring in that's properly aged, you know, it deteriorates, it decomposes. Look at these temperatures that we've been having, right? 100-degree plus temperatures, and we're not a desert. Look at the nighttime temperatures, 8 or 9 p.m. at night, it's still 90 degrees. So this unique temperatures that we have breaks down and decomposes a lot of this organic material. So you have to work it in and build up your area over time, particularly raised beds, as you see with school gardens. With these raised beds, you know, after a year or so, once they were originally topped off, they're down to 6 inches plus. So you have to work these beds with the native soil the best you can. Incorporate ideally every major spring and fall planting in these raised bed or traditional beds a minimum of 2 inches of properly aged garden mix or compost, and then use 3 pounds of a slow release fertilizer that we often use mid April, early May for our lawns. You know, our recommendations are very simple, folks. We don't recommend many products, we just recommend the right products at the right ratios, at the right rates, at the right time of the year. So the organic material worked in, as well as what we refer to as pre-plant fertilizer worked in into the native soil, ideally 6 inches if that's possible. Every major spring and fall planting is essential. This is how you're going to run this race. Remember, when you're growing, be it a tomato plant or a broccoli, the main goal in the short time of growing these seasonal plants is growing leaves, an abundance of healthy, vigorous leaves that are properly spaced out when planted or direct seeded for ample sunlight, for ample air circulation. But we need the organic material that helps the nutrition once we supplement nutrition through microbiology in the soil and moisture become readily available to the feeder roots of the plants. So all this is a circle of success. And that's why we cover these multiple times when we do these presentations. Oh man, what a downfall of so many community gardens, school gardens, and yes, even master gardener gardens with their backyards. If you're new to Texas and you're not familiar with purslane, Bermuda, or other types of weeds, I'm sure by the end of this summer or going into fall, you'll know and get familiar with many of these grassy broadleaf weeds. Or if you bring in contaminated soil that's not properly dug in the pits or aged correctly, nutsedge. The third classification is sedges. So we have to start out clean. When you drive out in the rural areas, in production areas, be it they're growing sorghum, corn, cotton, vegetables, commercial pecan orchards, fruit trees, or others, look how very clean. Remember, who are the best stewards of the land? Is the people that put food on our tables. You know, look at your produce section. You know, when this COVID mess started, unbelievable what was happening, shortages of toilet paper and paper towels and like, all this stuff. But did you ever notice that fresh fruits and vegetables at the beginning and still now and 12 months out of the year, I don't see any shortages there. So our farmers feed us and they do just a beautiful job. But downfall is weed management. Start out clean. Don't rule out any options. If you use herbicides, you always read and follow label instructions. These products are safe if we use them correctly. It's not the products, it's us as consumers not using them correctly and not wasting labor, pulling all these weeds and then coming back and they regrow in 2 weeks. I think we have other things that we need to do that are more productive. Drip irrigation. Part of the Earth Kind Environmental Stewardship Program is water and water conservation. Water is important. Water is life. You need a quantity and quality water in order for raising animals, in order to growing food, vegetables, and fruit. So if you're not familiarized with drip irrigation, particularly with fall planting, but throughout the year, it's a must. It's a good way to use water correctly if you're using the system correctly and maintaining it correctly. It minimizes weeds because it only puts water where you need it. It minimizes evapotranspiration, particularly once you mulch after you plant. And it really is a good thing to use. Rainwater harvesting for your specialized crops. plants on the patio, etc. And then, of course, drip irrigation here and there. But people waste water, not the plants. So we have to use these efficiently. Technology, everybody's using all this technology, which is fine, but, using timers and things like that. But, your best person out there is your shadow. That means you're out there often. You're inquisitive. You're looking. You're checking it out. You might say, but you got to make sure that if you have a leak in your drip irrigation system, you forgot to turn it on, you didn't set it correctly. A lot of people over irrigate instead of under irrigate, unfortunately, or went on vacation and the batteries died. So technology is as good as a person that knows it and uses it correctly. Mulching helps if you want to reduce weed pressure, if you want that better look, if you want to help regulate soil temperature, both heat and cold. It's unbelievable using mulch, and it's easy to weed your plants if a weed sneaks in there as well. In and around South and Central Texas, which is a renewable resource, is hardwood. So my favorite mulch in and around everything, not only the vegetable garden, but plants on the patio, plants in the landscape. And September, this is the time. Y'all have heard my other webinars. I say September coming out of August is a good time to put mulch everything. A lot of that organic mulch broke down during the heat of July and August. So this is a great time to replenish the mulch. I like a double shredded hardwood mulch with compost, which we refer to as a living mulch, And that's if you're in East Texas, you might use pine or cypress. If you live more north into the hill country, possibly cedar. But mulch, it really makes a difference, and it does wonders for all types of plants. That's my little backyard garden, 2,400 square feet of seasonal vegetable production. I do a lot of home composting in the walkways. Don't use Bermuda grass clippings, folks. You know what will happen with the sprigs and leaves and things like that in the walkway. Right plants at the right time, good nutrition, building up those traditional row beds, 30 inches wide, good spacing, good air circulation, which minimizes disease. I do see one weed in that right corner. Keep it clean. If you keep it clean, you minimize insects and disease as well. So you got to keep those weeds. Your best friend is not only your shadow, your second best friend is a sharp grubbing hoe, and your third best friend is a notebook. So you're constantly taking notes so you can be better and better next year. And your fourth best friend are getting those kids involved and teaching them a skill of gardening as well. Raised beds, you get a little bit up in age or you lack soil. You elevate these beds, so you're not stooping down. So, there's a lot of different designs and shapes that you can use, but, don't overcrowd your plants. Learn about the width and the size, the height of the plant. So you plant the right plant seed or transplants and good spacing as well. Containers, a right size plant for the container. Most plants do best in a 20-inch diameter container. People try to use these 10-inch number 5-gallon containers for tomatoes. That's too small, folks. Get an appropriate size container. Use a peat-based potting mix. Cut that with 20% finished high-grade compost. Lace it initially with a liberal, copious amounts of a slow-release container fertilizer, such as Osmocote 18612. And once a week, use 3 types of water-soluble fertilizers. Alternate one every week, but have 3 types because we don't like to eat the same food every day. A lot of different ways. This is a full whiskey barrel. We plant strawberries in September through to November as an annual, 8th-month annual. So you got strawberries planted on the sides so you can cascade. You got some leaf lettuce on the very top and tango celery on the very, very top. So good combination right there. And one of the best gardeners, I've been very, very fortunate. I have two mentors right there. The taller fellow in the background is Mr. Bill Rohde, been doing radio for 50 plus years. He's my radio mentor. He can hear us every Saturday. And Mr. Malcom Beck, who done passed away a couple years back. Malcom Beck, a great teacher. He's the godfather of Texas organic gardening, a founder of Gardenville. He made millions of dollars with reducing, reusing, and recycling by starting a composting and teaching people how to use lawn dressing, etc. Founder of Gardenville, his beautiful wife Delphine as well. And if you don't have some of Mr. Malcom Beck's books and you're serious about vegetable gardening, I think it's a good way to start by reading some of his books as well, Malcom Beck. This is his old vegetable farm, and corn in the back, olives and Changsha tangerines in the very back. His little purple Moran house. He used to recycle these big tractor tires, cut the bottom rims out, and then grow a lot of plants in containers, as well as traditional like that sweet corn and pole beans in the back there. So great, great man. I think Delphine, his wife, who's still living, Delphine really was the better of the both when it comes to vegetable gardening, and a great. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of great teachers in my life as well. So this is a traditional garden as well, rows and furrows, about 30 inches wide, raised up for drainage. This is a good review question here. So we do have pretty much good sun in the forefront, but in the back, a little bit too shady. And then, if a tree in the back where that chain fence is in the back, if a tree's 30 feet tall and you topple that tree, a tree's root system can go twice its height. So a 30-foot tree has probably potentially a 60-foot root system. And remember, 6 to 12 inches below the soil surface is 90% of the roots. So we could have challenges of not only the shade in the back area, but that roots going into that garden there. So raising it up, the higher the better, and deep watering with drip irrigation to encourage the roots not to be shallow surface roots, but deep is the key. Very clean in the garden zone area, but we probably want to keep it a little bit more clean and pristine on the left and right. If we're not pulling or grubbing or using herbicides, at least keep the perimeters mowed down. Mow. Never let a weed flower or set seed. One weed now, if it flowers and sets seeds, potentially will be thousands the following year. One turns into 1,000. So weed management, just like we see this review question here, is very, very important. So let's talk about 12 months of vegetable consideration. So we do a lot of trials locally. We have a lot of Belgian farmers. The largest Belgian migration in the country was here in our winter garden. The urban farm at the San Antonio Food Bank used to be the Vandewally farm, and then we do a lot with the Verstratens and Versatives family as well. Trials of tomatoes, peppers. San Antonio has always been the hub of new plant introductions. Vegetables, with all the work that Dr. Sam Cotner, Dr. Parsons, and Dr. Jerry Parsons and Dr. Larry Stein still work on today. And of course, watermelons, Texas is the biggest producer in the country. So when you do vegetables, you always have to have flowers, for beneficial insects and pollinators. So right now, folks, if you have not planted your transplants of fall marigolds and fall zinnias, this is the time to do it. So color is good, mixed in with vegetables for beneficial insects and pollinators. Plus, this is the ideal time. The far left is zinnias like Dreamland, and the middle is Antiqua, a large blooming marigolds, and then the New Deal types of coxcomb, the celluloses there. So this is the time, prime time, not spring, to plant these transplants this weekend. And a lot of these plants support the Texas Superstar Plant Program, which San Antonio is the hub. 90% of all the plants of the Texas Superstar Program have come out. And that's supporting jobs. You know, we need to help industries. A lot of people unemployed. You know, our number one agriculture commodity here in Bexar County, in this big urban sprawl area, $1.6 billion to our local economy, 14,000 plus employees, is our green industry, wholesale plant growers, independent nurseries, landscape plants, and we grow businesses. That's what Extension does. Extension Horticulture grows and trains employees and businesses. We're pro-business, and we want to help us as home gardeners have those beautiful plants through the trials, you know, pollinators and beneficial insect plants, et cetera, et cetera. Many of those are part of the Texas Superstar plant program as well. So we said about Mr. Malcom Beck, the godfather of Texas organic gardening. Hopefully you'll add some of his books to your home library. A great citizen scientist, without a doubt, probably one of the best I've ever met. And of course, if you're serious about Dr. Sam Cotner, a Texas vegetable book, you need to have this, and hopefully some of y'all have ordered this already from Texas Gardening Magazine. A must. If you're doing vegetable gardening in Texas and you're a master gardener for sure, this is a must for your home library. Purchase it from Texas Gardening Magazine, their website. And of course, you know these three websites, you know, a ton of information. If you're not familiar and utilizing and reading up old articles on plantanswers.com from Dr. Calvin Finch, Dr. Jerry Parsons, and all the great work Dr. Parsons. I rank him up with the old plant men of Texas, Lynn Lowry, Benny Simpson, just to name a few. Dr. Parsons really, really done so much for the horticulture world and our great state of Texas as well. The Children's Vegetable Garden Program blog. I get so many people say, hey, where do I start? Or, you know, I need help. I need more guidance. Folks, if you go to the Children's Vegetable Garden Program blog, do a web search. This is the oldest ongoing vegetable gardening program in the nation, a Saturday morning gardening school overseen by our Bexar County Master Gardeners. Unfortunately, we started this spring and then COVID shut us down. Very, very sad, you know, and then we're not going to do fall because of the urban situations in Texas are much harder than the rural, unfortunately. And so, but use this. Just look at the old archives. We have a formula down here in this part of the state, and hopefully the rest of the state can learn and follow from it. We have the grower growing the plants for the independent nursery. So the whole circle is there, the right plant at the right time from good people. And hopefully you just read the agendas, follow what these 8-year-olds do from start to end on these agendas. And I think you can be smiley face like this young lady when she was getting some of her produce ready for the vegetable show about 2 falls ago. There's a picture this past spring. Beautiful Irish potatoes, tomato cages. Halfway up the cages were just recently unwrapped around mid-April, going into Fiesta. This is about 2 years ago. You know, when you grow tomatoes, you want to use 4 to 5 foot tomato cages with a 16 to 20-inch diameter, and they're anchored down as well. So look at that. Look how beautiful these plants are. Very pristine, very clean, very vigorous, healthy growing plants, flowers, fruits on the tomatoes, purple Martin house in the back to help us minimize some insect. Look at the walkways. I don't see any rocks or weeds. This is what we need to do. Clean, clean, clean. And follow those agendas on the Children's Vegetable Garden Program blog. as well as all the information we gave you as well. So tomatoes, it's more than tomatoes, still the number one um, vegetable that are grown. Of course, Celebrity, 1982, came out as a number variety with Dr. Jerry Parsons here locally. The number one planted tomato nationwide, Celebrity tomato, and we use it as the control when we do all these tomato trials. So, all right, January through December. Let's run through this real quick. January, some considerations for January. Typically the coldest month of the year. But January is a good time for your peas, your English peas or your shelled peas. Okay, English peas or your shelled peas, and these are delicious. We don't really recommend bush types. We like the vining types. Some people start planting a first wave as early as, particularly if you're San Antonio or south of San Antonio, as early as late October, November, depending on the how cool the fall and winter is, but usually January. Some people get mildew issues with this, and this is where using drip irrigation correctly, you don't want to get the leaves of the plant wet. That's where disease pressure typically in drip irrigation minimizes. But look at these English peas, how delicious. You might get powdery mildew. If you start seeing the early symptoms, just use an appropriate vegetable fungicide ASAP. Remember, these products, if we follow and read and apply them correctly, they're okay to use, but it's us not using them correctly. Also in the month of January, one of my favorites, the tendrils are edible. Grow them as a trellis, supporting for the vine-like growth of the plant much, much better than the bush types, are both the snow and Chinese peas, the sugar snaps. Look how expensive these are at the grocery store. A lot of them aren't going to make it inside. You get these very young developing pods, and a lot of them you eat them out there in the garden. That's how sweet they are. So you see the flowers and you see the harvest right there, and it's amazing. Soon after that flower sets, within 2-3 days at the most, you're already harvesting these young tender pods. So these plants, these pea type plants with 2 or 3 different selections of these cool weather types will go to usually about late March, early April, and then start dying out with the heat. Grandma would be very happy too if you plant the old-fashioned flowering peas. Those are so fragrant as well. You can bring them in as a cut flower as well. So those aren't edible, but the fragrance is unbelievable. Texas A&M, particularly with Dr. Leonard Pike and Dr. Leepard, all their contributions that they did, building the onion industry in our state and the country with the Texas Supersweet onions. A lot of great, beautiful history. January is a good rule of thumb to plant onions. Some people start as early as mid-November. Most of the state grows short and intermediate varieties. Long day varieties are usually don't do well, maybe close to Lubbock and far, far north part of the state, but we grow short and intermediate selections of sweet onions. You buy the little bunches of plantlets. Usually there's about 60 little plants. You can find these at your local independent nursery or your feed store. Larger doesn't necessarily mean better. So as long as the top is green, the little ones will produce as well. So larger doesn't necessarily mean better. Remember, you're growing leaves. Every leaf on a bulbous like allium, onion, garlic, etc., represents a ring. So we grow leaves, healthy leaves. 11 to 13 leaves represents the same amount of rings. That's going to be the huge onions, onion ring type onions. We plant these little plantlets very tight, and then we thin them. We use them for cooking as green scallions, green onions, top and bottom, all of it. And then we space them out 4 to 6 inches so we can get the bulbous structure to size up. Y'all see any weeds there? Very clean, isn't it? That's the key. Good spacing, sunlight, air circulation, ample nutrition, building the soil. This young fella, these were some children that planted their onions when the fall session at the Children's Vegetable Garden Program was ending. We ended about close to Christmas, and around mid-November, they planted their first wave of onions, and they harvested their onions right around April, May of the spring session. And of course, the most recognized Texas onion is the 1015Y. 1015Y represents October 15th yellow. Aggies are simple, folks. We're simple. October 15th yellow is in the Rio Grande Valley when they direct seed down in the valley. If you're not familiar with Dixondale Farms, beautiful, beautiful family, largest onion grower of plantlets in the nation. They supply 90% of all seed companies, and it's unbelievable what they do. So go to their website, learn more about onions, maybe learn about leeks. You can plant leeks like a Lancelot leek in January, and there's so much great information. You can also, if you're having issues finding certain types of onions, you can mail order directly from them, and then other products to purchase from them as well. Great family. We love businesses to support them and grow these industries. And these guys have been in business over 100 years. We deal with people that have been around as long as us. The extension service in Texas, over 106 years old. And this is how we grow not only new businesses, but take care of these traditions that take care of us as well. Asparagus. The Roman legions used to plant asparagus in the Mediterranean region every 20 miles or so. It grows wild in many areas over there. Mary and Martha Washington, great, great women of this great nation, founding women of this nation. And most of the old varieties of asparagus is Mary or Martha Washington. But you really want to find newer selections. And the best of the best is this UC 157. University of California, UC, University of California, Riverside, 157. They do pretty much all the work. They do quite a bit of work on asparagus research. This is a male sterile selection. Asparagus has both male and female plants. If you have female plants that have red berries, tag them, jerk them out, and replace with these UC 157 strains, which should be all pure male sterile selections, but sometimes they get mixed up. But you plant the crowns that look like spiders, typically in the month of January. You purchase 1.5-year-old crowns. And remember, we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg on these crops. Your homework assignment is going to Aggie Horticulture and plantanswers.com on the vegetable sections and learn and study up on guidelines of how to select, plant, and maintain all these types of crops. And you know what happens to one out of every 3 people that consume asparagus. And tomorrow night, when we do our family steak dinner, we always like to throw, besides lobster tail, we always like to throw some asparagus on the grill. Very, very delicious. The challenge with asparagus, you need a lot of plants. So like sweet corn and watermelon, a lot of y'all don't have the space. This plant, you need at least 4 plants, 4 crowns per family member, minimum, ideally 6 per family member, spaced out every 18 to 24 inches. So you need the space to grow this. And it lasts for 10 to 12 years typically. So it's a long-lived perennial crop as well. February, typically February, we refer to as Irish potatoes. We don't call them just potatoes. We should refer to them as Irish potatoes. So January, while the selection is best, you might start buying seed or certified Irish potatoes from your favorite independent nursery or feed store. And this one is white Kennebec, but there's also red Lesotho, red Pontiac, and one of my favorite, Yukon Gold. So the information of how to plant them, spacing them, cutting them, curing them, we have more in-depth information again on the Aggie Horticulture and plantanswers.com website. Beautiful red Lesotho that this young lady pulled out a couple of springs ago in late May, when they're usually the plants start wilting on the top and turning brown, mid to late May. Our first reaction when a plant turns brown or yellow is watering. Usually that's the worst thing we can do, is water a plant more when it's yellow or brown, or fertilize it. That's a reaction that most people do, is fertilize it because it's yellow and brown, and water, but you'll rot those tubers in the ground if you overwater. And just jerk the plant out or gently use a pitchfork. If you've ever eaten new potatoes from the garden, it's unbelievable taste. These selections don't hold for long, so you need to use them within 30 days after you harvest them, or as soon as you pull them from the ground. Unbelievable taste. And this young lady, as your children and grandchildren and children of your community, will never forget this experience. Yes, French fries do come from the ground, like the russet Burbank Irish potato, but now they can know what it takes for the farmer to bring in food and have that skill that they'll never forget and experience, mentored from Bexar County Master Gardeners the rest of their lives. So we come out with the Rodeo tomato every year. February is our rodeo, and if it really does a good job, it becomes a Texas superstar plant. A couple years ago, Harris Moran was 8849 was our rodeo tomato. Supports youth gardening and the Junior Master Gardener program, 4-H. Of course, we all know 4-H, much older than the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts of America, holding to their tradition. And you don't have to be just agriculture when you're in 4-H. You know, there's so much that these kids use and become very good, productive citizens of our great nation as well. So a lot of y'all potted up tomatoes, as we do in February with the rodeo tomato. Plant them throughout the month of March, early April at the latest, and potted these up about 30 days ago because it was so hot in late July and August, right? And now this is the time on these big tomatoes that are green and healthy. Get them in the ground this week, folks, no later. All these warm weather crops need to get in the ground today, this week. Some of y'all planted some 30 days ago, smaller transplants, well watered on drip and well maintained with nutrition when you planted them, and keeping the weeds out. This is what we do when we do late February, March plantings of our tomatoes at the children's garden. And we plant early in late February, March, and we bring our first tomatoes in early through the month of May, no later than early to mid-June, right? Because it gets too hot. School's out, folks. This makes a big difference. If you're not wrapping your tomatoes and some of these crops to get an early jump, neighborhood bragging rights, this is a must. 4 to 5 degrees of extra winter protection. That's the sunlight in there. It works as an insect barrier, keeps the wind off. The wind is hard on early plantings. Again, I don't see any weeds out there. Very clean, very pristine. Look at your little tomato. You know, this tomato was planted 2-3 weeks ago, doubling in size, almost half up that cage. That's 4 to 5 feet tall. Very clean, very well fertilized. That pre-plant granulated fertilizer makes a big difference. In ground plantings, raised bed plantings, you know, container plantings, we also use water soluble once a week. But the first 3 weeks, I think all these transplants and ground plantings, once a week for the first 3 weeks I would continue with a water soluble fertilizer and wean them off. Look at this tomato plant too. When you plant these plants and you maintain them, try not to let any leaves touch the soil because a lot of soil-borne diseases drip. And then when it gets hot in May or when you plant in July and August, early to mid September, then put that fresh mulch out there. Early plantings, don't mulch till May because you want the soil temperatures to take advantage and warm up to help root development and accelerate that growth as well. March, we talked about celebrity, a medium-sized semi-determinate selection. We always use it when we do our tomato trials. But look for other great determined and beef slicing type tomatoes, such as Tycoon, which was not only a rodeo tomato years back, also designated as a Texas superstar tomato. Valley Cat, if you haven't tried or planted Valley Cat, do that this fall as well as next spring. And of course, if you get kids, that's BH968. You can buy seeds from Johnny Select Seeds. If you're not familiar with Johnny Select Seeds, folks, it's a must place. Cool place to check it out. And Johnny Select Seeds are awesome. This is the best of the best. Years ago, the Dwarf Cherry Surprise was a rodeo tomato. It's also a Texas superstar plant. You don't need to grow a lot of plants. Just do a good job on the few plants. This plant, one plant, if you grow it correctly, is the greatest plant for the school gardens program and get kids involved. One plant can produce 8 to 12 pints of quality fruit off them. April, it's getting warmer, starting to warm up. Let's do sweet potato slips. I like them in large containers. Large container because you get a kind of a pinworm often if you from click beetles if you plant them in the ground. So I think large tubs, 20-inch diameters, put 3 to 5 slips in there. We harvest them in October, top over that container, and let them cure for about 30 days. And from Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, sweet potato pie with Texas pecans. You can't beat it. Awesome. Peppers. We always want to plant peppers early when we plant tomatoes. But peppers and eggplants, let it warm up a little bit more. Let it warm up a little bit more. If you're worried that you're not going to find the pepper transplants in April, May at the latest, depending where you're located at, pot them up as we do early February plantings of tomatoes or July, August plantings of as well. So pot them up if you don't think you're going to find the plants later, but there's so many different peppers out there. Peppers should complement the meal. The people are crazy. They do this Carolina Reaper and ghost pepper buchalacchio, and all these other things. So have some bluebell ice cream nearby when you grow those types of peppers, right? But grow a pepper that you like to enjoy. I love the Big Jim or Anaheim, which they call hatch pepper for that branding of that area in New Mexico, Chile Verde. I love it, but complements. Serranos and jalapenos are traditional. Bell peppers are good, but you really need to fertilize them. But watch what you eat coming in and going out because we got to be careful with those hot ones, particularly if you get kids growing peppers and they get a hold of a ghost pepper or a Carolina Reaper. You know what's going to happen, right? That ghost pepper, buchalacchio, they use them for smoke bombs in India to keep the native indigenous elephants from attacking their villages. And we want to eat those things. That's pepper spray. You know what I mean? So use the right ones that you and your family want to grow. Peppers are a must. We grow tomatoes and we grow onions. We like salsa with our Texas, in Texas, we love it. Bell peppers are like cauliflower. You got to grow a bell pepper tree and you really got to put that fertilizer on them just like you get cauliflower. Big plant, lots of leaves, so we can get a big sized pod that's shaded from those leaves so we're not getting sunburn on them. Same with the eggplant. There's the big black beauty eggplant and the small Asian one. Maybe I'll throw some of those on the grill tomorrow. Put a little olive oil and salt after I sweat them and get the sweat out of them when you cut them. I'd be good with that asparagus tomorrow, I think, too. Zucchini and squash. So we're mirrored. We do that. So we need to get all these warm weather crops in now. We need to put seed in now. We do this in late March and April. We do that now. Late August, early September, we get the seeds of zucchini and squash, as well as cucumbers, or wait a week or two and then put cucumber transplants. Look for sweet success, sweet slice, jade. Get these burpless selections. Grow them as a vine, upright structure. One plant equals 8 to 12 quality marketable cucumbers on them. Of course, get the kids involved. Bush beans in the spring, but now we can grow not only bush beans now, but we can grow yellow and purple much better in the fall than we do in the spring. Remember the harvest row on squash, zucchini, okra, cucumbers. These are hiding out there. Get through those plants and don't let these things get too outgrown. You want young, tender production. You don't want seeds. You want the best nutrition. If mother plant pushes the first wave out and they go into seed and they're overgrown zucchinis as big as baseball bats, then what's going to happen? The plant's going to be more prone to disease, insect, and mites. You want them young and people ask, well, how do I know when they're ready? Folks, you know when they're ready. You go to the farmer's market. Who's your farmer's market you go to? Do you know your local farmers on the rural areas of your counties? If you don't have that experience, what does the produce section bring in? Just see what the farmers bring in. That's the best way to kind of give you a guideline. But get these things when they're young and tender, no seeds in them, and then really learn from that. May, it's starting to get hotter. So we start transitioning with warm weather crops, direct seeding okra, Texas pink eye, black eye peas, southern peas. That will take better the okra, and then the southern peas we carry into the summer, maybe the small fruited tomatoes, the sweet potatoes that we put the slips out earlier, eggplant, which likes the warm weather. So we're limited because June is we're harvesting. We should be from May to June doing most of the spring harvest. By 4th of July, it's finished. We're getting the kids involved. July, we get sweet corn and a watermelon and things. But July and August is too hot. And then we start all over again with these warm weather crops, as we just mentioned. July and August, September, we need to get them all in the ground this week. And then we go to cool weather crops starting mid-September to mid-October, early plantings. Early plantings in mid-September is Thanksgiving dinner. Best planting of transplants of these cold weather crops, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower is October, early October, healthy transplants. For Christmas dinner, right? Christmas dinner. We do a lot of research in broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, so we come out with the best of the best broccoli. I challenge anyone to grow broccoli and compare it to Green Magic broccoli. The best broccoli we can grow out there. A Texas superstar broccoli as well. Look at these young fellas getting some vegetables ready for their spring competition. This is spring broccoli. This was planted in February, early March, and was brought in for the competition in late May. Awesome, awesome. So that's why we like Green Magic for spring broccoli as well. But really the best time, the best is October for Christmas dinner. The biggest heads, 6-inch tight heads. It's a flower. You harvest that main terminal head of broccoli, and then you got the little trees that you keep harvesting on the side. You might be lucky, particularly when you fertilize correctly, you might need a chainsaw to cut some of these large terminal heads as well. Let some of them flower in January. You need the bees to have flowers, which are limited in January, so that September, October planting, let a few of them flower at least through the month of January for our bees on those warm, sunny days when they go out there. October, late September, October, try celery. You know, we always want to try something different and new. Celery is a fun crop, and you might look for tango, look for little transplants, or you should have started the seed about 60 days ago. Tango is an awesome, awesome celery. Beautiful ribs. A lot of people don't like celery because it has a lot of the threads, the string that comes out. Tango doesn't really have that. And Tango really likes that fall, winter weather and can take that days when you wake up in the morning with the air condition on. I mean, the heater on, and then by two have the AC on. Tango's a little bit more tolerant, much better than Conquistador that's out there as well. So, yeah, we can grow it. It's awesome. Excuse me. We plant in September through November when you can find transplants, and we usually bring it in anywhere from February, March, typically. So it's a long-term crop, grown in containers or in your ground. So you got to plan it out for the time that you have to grow. October is the month of garlic, vampires, Halloween, and garlic. Okay. So Dixondale Farms has some information on how to plant garlic. Do not plant the ones from the grocery store. Make sure they're certified and seed type garlic like the Irish potatoes from a feed store or nursery or garden center. And you put the biggest cloves in that are detached from the garlic head that has a basal plate of root potential. You plant the half moon up with the nose barely pointing out. The basal attachment of the roots will root in. Plantanswers.com and Aggie Horticulture on the vegetable section and articles. We have a lot of more information. All your root crops go from October to heaviest direct seeding, typically late September, early October, till multiple plantings till about early March, depending on the part of the state. So direct seed, put quality seed. When you go to Johnny Select Seed, you might try some of these pelletized seed. Often people plant root crops too deep. Pelletized seed will help you with your spacing and your planting, but carrots, radishes, beets, turnips, late September, October being the best time to early March. Use that insulate for later plantings to cover these new seedlings when they germinate if you're worried about frost, because it really protects from frost burning the little seedlings of plantlets when they emerge. Leafy greens from semi-Savoy spinach, you can do seeds, but if you can find transplants, October to November through January, February, you might have better. Look how delicious that tub of spinach is. Unbelievable. Very nutritious for you. Popeye would be happy, and you can be strong and get these kids. We're ruined when we were kids. We're eating spinach out of a can. If you've ever had fresh spinach from the garden or lightly saute it, oh, forget it. You'll never want to go back to that can again, which ruined us when we were kids. Fresh spinach is unbelievable. And other leafy greens, beet greens, turnip greens, radish greens, anything that's green, kale, they're all wonderful. Throw some leaf lettuce in there as well. Cauliflower is awesome, but um, you got to grow big leaves to cover that curd that gets the size of a 50-cent piece in the middle of the plant. And you got to wrap them to eliminate light, which is called blanching. And so cauliflower and bell peppers, you really got to put that nutrition on them early and much heavier than any of the crops that you grow. And cauliflower that's it. Once you pick that big, beautiful white ivory award-winning head, that's it. Broccoli, you'll have the little side shoots. So September, October is really the best time for your transplants. The same as broccoli. Look at beautiful white ivory cauliflower. Do you want the one on the right or do you want the one on the left? I think you know the answer. Look at that. She's never going to forget this experience. That's award-winning, marketable cauliflower. Snow crown is my favorite. 5 to 7 heads. So you don't need to grow a lot of plants for a 10-foot row. Get some head cabbage out there to the left. Get some of these Chinese cabbages on the right. Try some of these this fall as well, September through November as transplants. Look at that head cabbage. Look at the tomato. That's what you want. You don't want smiley faces out there. You want them to have this experience. She's getting her 3-pound cabbage ready and beets and other things for the competition out there as well. 12 heads for 15 to 20 feet. That's enough sauerkraut for South Texas. So you don't need to grow a lot of plants. Just do a good job. I don't see any holes on those after you clean them up. 3 pounds average per plant. The produce section likes 1.5-pound cabbages. As home gardeners, we can grow much, much bigger. Try some of the red acer as well. Red cabbage is awesome in the fall as well. Look at this young person here. That's as big as him. That Napa Valley Chinese cabbage. Large, awesome, awesome cabbage. And stir fry, cabbage wraps. And then the one on the left's a Bok Choy type called Joy Choy, which is a larger type, which the patio you can use the stem as you would do celery and the leaves and stir fry as well. Every part is delicious. Every part is edible. Whoa. This forgiving type larger selection of Bok Choy or Pak Choi called Joy Choy won the show that year. Unbelievable. I think I was out of town that year when they judged, but isn't he happy? He's not going to forget this experience. October, Brussels sprouts, cabbages with attitude, little cabbages. October is the time to set out transplants of Brussels sprouts. Long-term crop, you pretty much bring them in February or March. Again, read up more about growing Brussels sprouts on plantanswers.com and the Aggie Horticulture. Remember, we grow leaves. Nutrition is important. Got to keep the nutrition going. Cabbage loopers, caterpillars, and all these green leaves. Start spraying immediately and alternate with fresh liquid BT in the morning or in the evening. Spinosad in the late afternoon after the sun has dropped. Alternate. Those are both approved for organic farming. Read and follow label instructions. Get it underneath the leaves the best you can. But don't let these cabbage loopers and caterpillars eat the plants. Use what you got to do. Control them. There's no bullets in that gun, by the way. It's just a joke. But a little bit shade there. But remember, shade trees start losing their leaves pretty soon. So that's part of the fall and winter experience. So you might not have shade at the beginning of September, October when you set out cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, but when they lose their leaves, you'll have more sunlight during the short days of fall and winter to grow some of these cool weather crops. Control these caterpillars. Don't let them eat these plants up early, folks. And we're letting you use spinosad and fresh liquid BT, which are organic and approved for farming. November and December. Most of us are harvesting. Most of us are enjoying time with the family from Thanksgiving to Christmas. Isn't that when we should spread out the correct plantings and enjoy our time with our family and harvest? Get the kids involved with the cooking experience. Don't forget landscape diversity. We've got to get these marigolds and zinnias in the ground this weekend as transplants. Look at those fall marigolds. Bloom from Halloween to the first frost. Beautiful. Diversity is the key to bringing beneficial insects and pollinating insects as well. Let's take care of the bees and the beneficial insects. Cilantro, don't forget the herbs. October is the best time to direct seed. Cilantro, let them bloom in March, April. Let the seed go to coriander. Let them naturalize or harvest the brown seed. The plant finishes in April and May. Collect those brown seeds and then start planting seed in October. Get the kids involved. If you haven't been doing this with your own kids or grandkids or neighborhood kids, nature is so beautiful, such as gardening. Do they know the dragons of the garden, such as this anole? Are we being inquisitive? Do we know the wolves of the garden like spiders? Do we know wasps that are hunting caterpillars? Are we respecting them? Are we getting to know them? Using the right pesticides so we're not hurting these good guys, using them correctly, right? Are we starting our purple martins? You know, purple martins typically come in around February, building a good colony for bad insects. You know, they're beautiful to listen to and they help us out as well. And they're reliant on humans. If you study purple martins, they rely on us. So we should have, everyone should have a neighborhood purple martin house and build these strong colonies as well. Get the kids involved. Yeah, it's confusing for us as adults, but this is an experience they'll never forget. They're going to cherish that time. It's work, it's sweat, but from start to end and making them junior master gardeners and become junior chefs in the kitchen, it's fun and it's worth it. We need to learn how to use our hands and not just the computer keypad and the telephone. You know, but most importantly, they will and we will as adults better understand and respect our American farmers. Remember the 3%. 2% is our American agriculture, our farmers that can feed everyone in the world, 8 billion people. The other 1% is the military, right? And our first responders that we need to respect and love, who protect and defend the greatest nation on God's green earth. So hopefully you learned a little bit about vegetable gardening 12 months out of the year. Try ethnic vegetables, try something new and see. And have a notebook, write these things down, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and get better. You know, this should be archived. Ruby usually gets these edited a little bit, like spelling cherry wrong, and put them on our YouTube channel. We have about 3 other vegetable and pest and other horticulture and landscape related. Subscribe to it. And of course, the Bexar County Extension website, the homepage, a lot of good things happening there as well. So next Tuesday, we'll do our monthly garden Q&A. Yeah, fall's almost here. It's 3 weeks out. So fall is for planting landscape tree shrubs, perennials. So hopefully y'all got some good questions for us next Tuesday as well. And you can join us as well. So there's my email address. Join Bill Brody, Mr. Brody, my radio mentor, 50 plus years in radio. With him and I've been doing this for 15 years now on the 1200 AM Lawn and Garden radio show every Saturday. And there's my email address. Hopefully you learned a little bit today so you can grow some Guinness Book of World Record tomatoes. So we'll go ahead and answer any questions. Ruby, thank you, folks. And let's learn and let's listen to all these questions so we all learn together.
Okay, thank you, David. That was very informative, great presentation. Our first question is about mulch. We had a question, would you suggest a nugget size mulch for fall vegetable gardening or for vegetable gardening?
So what was I going to say before that? No, I forgot, but okay, we'll get to mulch. Let me find my picture of mulch. Oh, so real quick before I find the picture on mulch, you know, when I do trainings on vegetable gardening, like when we do Master Gardener intern training, which we unfortunately have to cancel this fall. So sad, but we'll be back to normal. We can't let things just tie us down. We'll get back to where we were at. But when I do my vegetable talk, when we do Master Ruby, don't forget we need to change that slide. When we do Master Gardener talks, I do 4 hours just on vegetable production because that's one of my favorite things that we do. But mulch, I like shredded mulches. I don't like little chips because what are we trying to do when we use mulch? Not only on our vegetable garden and containers and our landscape, but we're trying to build the soil. The best soils in the world have a 5% organic material content to it. A lot of us have less than 3 or 1% or even half of 1%. So we lack organic material. say good mulch, particularly that's double shredded, like the hardwood mulch that has compost in it, we're building the soil. So when it breaks down and decomposes and we're ready for the next season, the coarse material we rake away, the very fine material, which becomes what? Compost. We put that part of a building and work in that fresh compost and our pre-plant granulated fertilizer in it. If we use coarse material, if we use chips, it's not doing anything. It's not regulating soil temperature. It's not acting as a sponge to hold that moisture in, right? You know, if it's 100 degrees and we've been using mulch in and around our vegetable garden landscape and we put a soil thermometer, it's 80 degrees in that soil. So do not use coarse material. Do not use chips. It's not doing anything. It's not doing anything. If anything else, you know, like I tell people that use gravel and aggregate, white marble and lava rock, did you walk at 3 p.m. today, July and August? Take your sandals off, walk on that. And you have that in and around your plant material. How do you think your plant's roots feel underneath? Just as your feet just blistered after walking on it.
Okay, thank you, David. Our next question comes from Lily. Her question is mainly about container gardening. She's trying to grow a few vegetables on her balcony. She's thinking about growing tomatoes, zucchini, asparagus, and just wants to know any recommendations on growing vegetables in containers on the balcony.
Well, follow our guidelines, both Bexar County Extension Service, the website, plantanswers.com, and Aggie Horticulture has the varieties that have proven the test of time to plant. So varieties, you deal with a good independent nursery. Asparagus, you're wasting your time because remember, you need 4 to 6 asparagus per family member. So unless you got a lot of containers, and you can only really grow 1 asparagus in these tubs. So you need, for a tomato and larger types of crops, you need a 20-inch diameter container as these tubs that are in front of you. You need drainage holes on the bottom. If you have a saucer or basin, you never let that saucer stagnate with water, okay? Use a 4 to 5 foot tomato cage, 16 to 20-inch diameter. For your peppers and sweet basil, you can grow 3 peppers, 3 zucchini, 3 squash in each containers. But use those Hecho en Mexico cages. Don't be using those small little rinky-dink tomato cages on your tomato. Use them for your sweet basil, your eggplant, and things like that. So yeah, get them in the ground this weekend. Use big tomato cages. Use 2 or 3 cucumbers seeded on those big cages to grow up. Those would do fine now, but let's get them going. 2 to 3 broccolis at the most, 2 to 3 cauliflower, 2 to 3 Brussels sprouts, September, October. So follow the guidelines of spacing, and a lot of the plants have helpful tags of sizes and spacing. Utilize those as well.
Okay, there was another part to that question. What about root crops in containers?
Oh yeah, definitely. Anything you can grow in a raised bed or traditional garden, you can grow them in containers. Just read the instructions. Well, what I want y'all to really get away is you're very limited unless you use a 20-inch plus diameter container that drains well with a premium peat-based potting soil. Cut it with 20% high-grade finished compost. Lace it for your pre-plant granulated fertilizer with copious amounts of slow-release container fertilizers such as Osmocote 18612 or every weekly with a water-soluble fertilizer weekly from start to end. Purchase 3 water-soluble fertilizers, alternate once a week with these 3 different types. Definitely. Just space them out correctly. But don't waste your time on these 10-inch, 5-gallon containers. It's a nightmare to water them and it's you don't have enough root space for those plants to grow in.
Okay, thank you, David. Let me see if I can, I accidentally muted you, so let me unmute you. David, the next question is about marigolds. You had talked about growing marigolds with your vegetables. Is it too late to grow marigolds from seed right now?
I would say yes. You really had to do that probably about 30 days ago. So you're growing these warm season type plants with the heat, and then they're going to flower and produce with the cooler temperatures, which usually start happening around mid to late September, early October. So you really need to put the transplants in of the fall marigolds. You want to do the big blooming type marigolds. There's orange, gold, and yellow. If you're buying them when they have flowers on them, that was one of my first research projects with Dr. Parsons back in the late 80s before graduate school. Um, pinch off the blooms, pinch off the blooms, and then get Dreamland zinnias out as well, which makes a wonderful cut flower. So they're planted, transplants are planted in August, early to mid September at the latest, and then you'll enjoy them up to the first frost. And then don't forget the Celiosa as well, the one to the right. Those do awesome as well. Seed, you should have really done that 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's too late.
Okay, the next question comes from Dana. She says that she planted tomatoes and cucumber transplants in June, and they did get a bunch of tomatoes and cucumbers, but then the plant started to turn brown from the bottom up. And she's wondering, could that possibly be a soil issue?
No, you know what the answer is. It's too hot. We don't recommend planting that at that time of the year. We're finishing at that time of the year. 4th of July weekend to now, we might have set a few transplants of tomatoes out there, but it's too hot. It's too hot. July and August is too hot. And, a lot of us, look at the nighttime temperatures most of us have. And then look at all these days of 100-degree temperatures. So some of y'all planted tomatoes 30 days ago. Others will be putting bigger transplants out this week. But for cucumbers, let's put seed out today, this week, or fresh transplants out in the next week or two. But when you buy cucumber, squash, and zucchini as transplants, they're really better direct seeding. But if you go the transplant way, bigger does not necessarily mean better on zucchini, squash, and cucumbers. If you put out transplants, make sure they're nice and healthy with no more than 2 or 3 leaves emerging from that plant. Because if they're big, they're going to be stunted. All those cucurbit-like plants get stunted. But if your plants are ugly from the spring, you should have be putting out fresh transplants out at this time. We make the problems, folks. We try to get that one last tomato, one last cucumber going into the heat of July. Pull this junk out. What happens is we start bringing spider mites in, disease, and we're inoculating our garden. If we can't stay up on the spraying of disease, insect, and mites, jerk those plants out, put them in a black trash bag, and get rid of them. Spider mites do not compost well.
Okay, thanks, David. Our next question comes from Gloria. She wants to know what is good for nutgrass?
Well, a lot of remember it's nutsedge, not grass. Grass, broadweed, grassy weeds, broadleaf weeds, and the sedges. And often we bring it in because we're bringing in poor quality landscape or garden soil or compost. So we got to make sure we get quality first of all. Nutsedge, purple and yellow nutsedge, usually are more prolific on wetter soils. So if we're not properly irrigating, which drip irrigation really helps with that, If we're not properly fertilizing and bringing in good compost, you're going to be surprised by doing those good cultural steps will really eliminate. If it's still persistent and it has a very waxy leaf surface, a very waxy cuticle to it, then you want to use a product containing the active ingredient called halo or halosulfurin. And you have to use a non-ionic spreader sticker, a surfactant with that. And you got to do this early in the morning. You apply it, or if it's already growing in your vegetable garden, then you put a very gently with a sponge, apply it on the waxy surface, and then it goes to that nutlet. That's all the way down to communist China, that little nutlet down there. And what that herbicide does, it goes from the waxy leaf surface all the way to that nutlet deep, deep down, and it kills it from the nut. If you just jerk it out, pull it, you're snapping it from that nutlet, and then what happens? What happens? You get more nutsedge tomorrow.
Okay, well, that looks like the last of the vegetable garden related questions that we have in the chat box.
Awesome.
We
Awesome.
Yes, we do have some questions on fruit trees and roses and things like that. But just a reminder, folks, that David will be doing an open garden Q&A next week on the 8th. So those questions might be fitted better for that presentation. And we are over time, David.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
they can send me an email. There's my email address. Remember, don't send me 3 pages on the email, straight to the point, in-depth information, asking the question, one question at a time. You know, people send me 7, 8 questions, and I get confused after the second one. Send quality images attached to the email. And thank you, folks. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Denise. And hopefully you can enter your tomato as I did with the Guinness Book of World Record. And a lot of loving care, a lot of prayers, and a lot of good quality of what we talked about today. Thank you. Happy gardening, everyone. And y'all can listen to us tomorrow on the radio show. And hopefully y'all can join us with all these other non-related, vegetable-related questions next Tuesday with our garden chat. Learn and have fun, and happy gardening, everyone.